Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Manaras Academy's online chemistry lecture. The topic of discussion today is electrolysis, which is chapter number 5 of Igcse chemistry, code 0620, also known as electricity and chemistry. Electrolysis. Electro means electricity and lysis means breakdown. Decomposition of a compound using electricity or splitting of a compound into its elements is known as electrolysis. In order to understand how electrolysis takes place, we have to understand the working of an electrolytic cell. Electrolytic cell is the apparatus in which electrolysis is carried out. It consists of a battery, two electrodes. One is called the anode and the other one is called the cathode. The anode is connected to the positive terminal and the cathode is connected to the negative terminal of the battery. These rods are dipped in an electrolyte solution. An electrolyte is the substance which is being decomposed in this process. The electrodes and the electrolyte is placed in a beaker. Before studying the process of electrolysis, I will explain in detail each and every single apparatus which is being used. First is the electrolyte. Electrolyte is the substance which is being decomposed in this process. We will define it as an ionic compound which conducts electric current in molten or aqueous state. It can be an ionic compound in molten or aqueous state. It can be an acid in aqueous form or an alkali in aqueous form. Mostly these compounds are binary compounds. You might have studied them in your previous classes. A binary compound is one which is composed of ions of different elements, one of which is a metal and the other one is a non-metal. For example, a cation and an anion. Sodium iodide can be an example of a binary compound. We can clearly see from the figure that the liquid present in the beaker is known as the electrolyte. Electrode. Two or more rods dipped in electrolyte are called electrode. Or they can also be defined as a rod or plate through which electricity enters or leaves electrolyte during electrolysis. As we can clearly see in the figure that these two rods which are dipped in the electrolyte solution are known as electrolyte. The one connected to the positive terminal is called as anode and the other one connected to the negative terminal is called as cathode. Reactions occur at these electrodes. Electrode, one is called the cathode and the other one is called the anode. Anode is connected to the positive terminal of the battery and cathode is connected to the negative terminal of the battery. At anode, oxidation takes place and at cathode, reduction takes place. Reduction means gain of electron and oxidation means loss of electron. You might study in detail oxidation and reduction in chapter 7.4. In order to understand electrolysis, we must first understand that why the electrolyte used is present in aqueous or molten state. Either it is an acid or an alkali or an ionic compound. It must be in aqueous form. Why? That is because they consist of freely moving cations and anions. Now, a question comes into my mind. How does the aqueous form of most of the substances consist of freely moving cations and anions? For this, we will have to understand this picture. As we can see in this picture, that this is a solid crystal lattice of sodium chloride, an ionic compound, when it is dissolved in water. Its intermolecular forces of attraction break and as a result, they are converted into freely moving cations and anions. also responsible for the conduction of electricity. Now, another question is frequently asked by the students. Why are solid ionic/covalent compounds not used as electrolytes? As we all know that solid ionic compounds cannot conduct electricity as their ions are held together in fixed positions by strong electrostatic forces of attraction. In order for these ions to move, the solid must be dissolved in water or made molten, thereby destroying the crystal lattice. And so, as we can see in the previous diagram, that the crystal lattice is destroyed when an ionic compound is dipped into water, making it aqueous. As we all know that covalent compounds cannot conduct electricity, hence they do not undergo electrolysis. Now we are ready to understand the process of electrolysis. When electricity is passed through the electrodes, the anions present in the aqueous solution are attracted towards the anodes and cations are attracted towards the cathode. They follow a very simple principle of opposites attract each other. How? Let's move on to the next diagram. In this diagram, we can see that there is a beaker and an electrolyte containing two electrodes, one anode and the other one cathode. The anode is connected to the positive terminal of the battery and the cathode is connected to the negative terminal of the battery. When I zoom in, I can see that the negative cathode attracts the positive cations, whereas the positive anode attracts the negative cations. As you can see that these negative blue electrons are moving towards the anode. What happens over here might be very interesting. These negative ions lose electrons at the positive anode and are discharged. In the very same way, the cations are attracted towards the negative cathode and gain electrons and are discharged. By discharge, I mean that they are converted into their constituent elements from their ionic states. Now let's memorize. Step 2. At the anode, the anions are discharged, oxidized. Oxidation means, as you might have already studied, oxidation means loss of electrons. Through the loss of electrons means that the anions undergo oxidation and the cations are discharged. Reduced means that the cation undergo reduction at the cathode through gain of electrons. This is a very simple process. I will summarize this process again. For electrolysis, there is a beaker which contains the electrolyte. The electrolyte contains an ionic compound or an acid or an alkali, all of them in aqueous state. As we all know that in aqueous state they consist of cations and anions. The cations move towards, when electricity is passed through them, the cations move towards the cathode and the anions move towards the anode. The anode is connected to the positive terminal of the battery and the cathode is connected towards the negative terminal of the battery. At anode, oxidation occurs and these negative ions lose their extra electrons and are discharged and are converted into their neutral elements. At cathode, these positive ions gain electrons and are discharged, meaning that they are converted into their neutral element. Now we are going to study a summarized definition of this process. A process in which a chemical change, especially decomposition, is brought about by passing an electric current through a solution of electrolytes so that the electrolytes ions move towards the negative and positive electrodes and react with them.